Have you ever wondered if you could see a country's future just by watching who's leaving? It's a fascinating idea, right? Today, we're diving into this concept of a migration oracle, the theory that the movement of the Jewish community can act as a powerful early warning system for the health of an entire nation.
You know, it all kind of starts with this classic Soviet-era joke. So the leader, Brezhnev, he asks his premier, Kosygin, how many Jews do we have? Kosygin says, about 3 to 4 million. Brezhnev thinks for a second and asks, and if we just open the gates and let them all leave, how many would go? And Kosygin, without missing a beat, replies, well, 10 to 15 million. It's a dark joke for sure, but it gets at this really deep truth we're going to explore.
And that's really the heart of our question today. What if that punchline isn't just a punchline? What if that gap between the people who live somewhere and the people who wish they could leave is actually a super sensitive alarm bell, warning us of a major crisis before anyone else sees it coming?
So, let's get into it. How does a piece of gallows humor like that actually become a serious tool for analysis?
Well, this is what some researchers have dubbed the oracle concept. The idea is to treat Jewish migration patterns not just as numbers on a page, but as a high-frequency signal. Think of it like a canary in a coal mine for massive political change. It's this idea that their movements can act as a kind of mirror, reflecting the true state of a country's stability. So you might be asking, why this group in particular? Well, history has shown that when political uncertainty ramps up, this community tends to very quickly start asking some really fundamental questions. Questions like, is this the end of our time here? Is now the right moment to go? Their decision-making process becomes this intense, real-time assessment of a nation's future.
Okay, but if you're going to read an oracle, you need to know how to interpret the signs, right? You need to know what's just background noise and what's a real flashing red light. To do that, we need a benchmark, and for that, we have to look to history.
So our first case study is, of course, Nazi Germany. In just the 7 years from when Hitler came to power to the start of the war, a full 50% of Germany's Jewish population managed to flee. Half. That's our first major data point for what a crisis looks like.
Now look at this, the collapse of the Soviet Union. In a very similar 7-year window, what happened? 53% of Soviet Jews left. I mean, that number is remarkably consistent. It's another clear signal of a system in total upheaval.
Then we go to North Africa. After independence from colonial rule, the signal got even louder. In the decade after 1960, a huge 72% of the Jewish communities in both Morocco and Tunisia migrated.
And right next door in Algeria, it was even more dramatic. A staggering 75% of the Jewish population left in that same 10-year period. This wasn't just migration, it was a fundamental societal shift.
So here's the crucial takeaway. These 4 events, they give us our benchmark. They give us a clear, data-driven definition of a national crisis. When you see between 50 and 75% of the Jewish population leave in about a decade, that's it. That's the signal that a country is going through something profound and transformative.
All right, so now that we have this historical yardstick, this 50 to 75% crisis threshold, we can use it to read the signals that are happening right now, specifically looking at the really turbulent period between 2022 and 2025. But first, it's really important to understand how these numbers are calculated, because we're not just counting people who've already left. To get the full picture, researchers combine the number of people who actually migrate with survey data from those who are still there, asking them about their plans to leave. It's this combined total of actual and would-be migrants that gives us the real signal, which they then project over 7 years to match our historical benchmarks.
And wow, the data here tells a really powerful story. Just look at 2022. Russia is at 68% and Ukraine is at 62%. Both are firmly inside that 50 to 75% crisis zone we defined. The alarm bells are ringing loud and clear. But then look at Western Europe. The UK, France, Germany, they're all in the low single digits. It's a completely different reality.
But then, just when you think you have the story figured out, something amazing happens. By 2025, the signal from both Russia and Ukraine just plummets. Russia goes from that crisis level of 68% all the way down to 17%, and Ukraine drops from 62% to just 7%. The crisis signal effectively normalized in an incredibly short amount of time.
So what in the world happened? How did it change so fast? Well, researchers think it's 2 main things. First, new restrictions on movement simply made it harder to get out. But second, and this is really interesting, for a lot of people, just getting a foreign passport, having an escape plan in their back pocket, was enough. The option to leave provided a sense of security, so the immediate urgency faded. So what we're left with is this incredibly stark contrast. We had a clear, undeniable, five-alarm crisis signal coming from Russia and Ukraine in 2022 that has since died down. And all the while, the signal from Western Europe has remained consistently low and stable. It tells us that whatever anxieties people might have there, it's not registering as the same kind of existential threat.
Okay, so let's put it all together. After looking at the history, the benchmarks, and the most recent data, what's the final reading from our migration oracle?
The story the Oracle tells is this. Back in 2022, it correctly flagged a massive, system-level crisis in Russia and Ukraine. By 2025, that immediate danger signal has faded, suggesting things have settled into a new, maybe fragile, but less urgent state of being. And through it all, despite all the headlines and political noise, the Oracle shows that Western Europe remains fundamentally stable, not showing any signs of that kind of systemic breakdown.
You know, in the end, this whole oracle concept isn't about some magical crystal ball. It's really just a powerful reflection of how safe a community feels, how much faith they have in a nation's future. It's a uniquely human barometer for a country's health, and it leaves you wondering, what's it going to tell us next?